This is Channel 253. Beep, boop, boop.
On this episode of the Grit and Grain podcast,
the spread of information to like just the typical person sitting on the other side of your bar or in your bottle shop now knows so much more than they did 5 years ago and way more than 10 years ago and light years away than 15 years ago. You know, like how much, like everyone probably sitting out here knows, can at least name their 3 favorite hops at the bar.
That's probably fucking true.
And that wasn't a thing 10 years ago.
Channel 253 is supported by Microsoft. Microsoft is committed to civic conversations like those on Channel 253 that inform and empower Washington communities. To learn more, visit aka.ms/Microsoft in Washington.
Welcome to the Grit and Grain podcast, where we explore and celebrate the craft beer industry, community, and history in Tacoma, Washington, and surrounding Pacific Northwest areas. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let's get to it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Grit and Grain podcast, coming to you guys from the Parkway Tavern in Tacoma, Washington, talking about all of your favorite beer nerdy stuff. And this is part 2 of our 2-part episode with the fucking legendary Steve Luke from Cloudburst and all other sorts of breweries that we're going to get into more for this second half. It's totally a new week, and we're totally not drinking the same beers that we were for that last episode. So we'll just talk about this. So we didn't talk a ton about it, but I'd love to talk a little bit about your time at Elysian at Fields. And then, all the way up to 2016 when Cloudburst started and some of the stuff you've done since then.
Sure.
So we talked about you being at Rogue for a little bit, and then you left Rogue to take the job from Dick over at Fields, right?
Correct. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So when we moved out here, I had, I kind of swung through a bunch of breweries with like resume in hand. I had emailed Dick twice, no response to my email. But I popped into like Big Time, Pike, Black Raven, Hales, Schooner Exact, Two Beers.
All the major players.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
You were the one that Schooner Exact didn't hire.
I
think they hired everybody else.
I know.
Everybody else.
Yes. And so... settled with Rogue. And, in the first session, it said that Harpoon was the second most corporate brewery I worked for, but Rogue was the most corporate brewery I worked for. Now people know that. And the culture has changed, too, since kind of like it's for the better and changed over. The Joyces were very intense humans. I know you've probably met them both. Oh, my God, so intense. So brewing at Issaquah, at the Cask Fest, one of the Washington Brewers Guild's Cask Festivals. Dick swung through the booth, and at the time, Kevin Watson was running the Capitol Hill Brewery at Elysian.
Yeah.
Kevin now at Future Primitive, but Kevin and I met in Portland, Maine. Because he was a head brewer at a now defunct brewery in Portland, Maine, and then when I left, Kevin came on board to replace me at Allagash back in 2008 or so. So Kevin was my hookup. Oh my God! Yeah, look at that fest. Yes, that's the first Cloudburst festival that we ever did for
Cast Fest.
So I at least got to meet Dick. Said, why didn't you return my
respond to
my emails? He tried some beer. He enjoyed it. In between sessions, we got pizza at Bambino's, kind of down in Seattle Center. And he drunkenly offered me a job. And I said, I'm going to email you on Monday and you better return it. And he did. He held his word. So gave me the job offer and put in my notice at Rogue. That whole same week. So yes, it was kind of a chance encounter, which is a Cloudburst beer name.
Yeah,
of course.
And so started at Fields.
So Fields, for anybody who isn't familiar, is like the smaller kind of like experimental brewery that Elysian worked with, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it was a 10 hex system. So eight barrels, 8.2 barrels is what we turned. And we started off with 4 open fermenters. It's a really kind of like a wonky brew house. Kind of one of those brew houses that you look at and you're like, I don't think they thought about this much when they were designing it or buying it. It was, you're like, why is that like that? Like, so it was a great brew house to kind of like, to really kind of like cut your teeth on because I don't know. I think especially, coming from Issaquah, that brew house, which no longer is in commission, that was the number 2 JV Northwest brew house ever built. As far as a 15 barrel system goes. And it looked like it. It was a trip. But it gives you confidence. If you can brew on like a dinosaur like that, you can brew beer on anything.
Yep.
And same thing with Cloudburst. We started with Silver City's old brew house, which was a 1996 kit.
Yeah.
From another like kind of defunct Canadian brew house manufacturer. Which is now at Stemma, and he's still using it at Stemma. So,
nice.
Out of Bellingham. So we've gotten like that brew house, and we gave it to for a swan to him. And I'm sure within a couple of years, I know that he's already expanding, and I'm sure there's probably a new brew house like in the mix for that too. So I hope
Stemma's killing it on that old thing too, man.
Yeah. It's a quirky little brew house, but it's I hope it goes to someone else it stays in state and it goes to someone else really cheap for like, your first brew house for a couple of years until you get something that you really want.
That brew house itself kind of has a stellar resume too now. Some of the best brewers in the state have worked on this thing.
And Fields, that place is nuts. The amount of beer. Boy, Brian Barry,
Dude, where's Brian? Have you seen him?
South Tacoma, not as much as I want to.
Did he move farther away from here? I thought he used to like live nearby.
He was really close. He was like 2 blocks down, but he's now like South 64th.
Nice.
So.
Where is he working? You know where he's working?
He was 2 years at Peaks here,
cool.
and then COVID hit, and we kind of lost track of him.
We caught him.
Damn.
We had him for a second. Picked him up as a free agent, and
Nice.
But he would talk about how much volume. Like he was always like, it seemed like to like a lot of what your talent was designing quick turn beers, because you guys were going through so much fucking beer.
Those game days were like they're insane.
Yeah.
Down there.
Oh yeah, dude.
The double game days.
The double game days.
Jesus.
Yeah. If you have Mariners, Sounders going down, it's nuts.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of beer being done.
A lot of beer for sure. And that helps as far as like turnover goes. At that point, Tangletown was still making beer too, so they had 4 locations, all making different beer. You could have 50 different beer. They didn't have 50 taps at Fields, but ostensibly, like, you could be serving like that many different beers at once, all brewed under the same roof or same entity, and like that's pretty crazy.
Yep. How many beers did you brew there? Different beers.
Different beer. It was pretty much always different beers. Probably 2 brews a week for 5 years.
Jesus, man.
Maybe some gaps in there too. It's kind of like this Cloudburst is kind of the same way, where we average around like 100 unique beers a year or so.
Okay.
And it's
and you could brew whatever you wanted.
Yeah, it took about like 6 months to kind of like get like the leash extended to such. And then there was, for the most part, it was whatever I wanted, and then occasionally, like especially around like pumpkin season, there were certain things where it's like, hey, we need this beer, we need like this small volume of this beer for like this specific event. So can you brew up a batch of X or Y? Or really infrequently it would be like, hey, can you like brew up like, a core beer, but like use a different hop to kind of like see how like what does the wise taste like, you know, when you take out Cascade and use Centennial instead, kind of a thing.
And everybody noticed.
And everybody noticed.
This isn't the wise.
I mean, let alone like open fermenters, like different mill, different mash tun, different. You know, it's like, oh, you know, it's fine. Just see what the hop does. You know, yeah. So yeah, for the most part, just like free reign.
Nice. So what Elysian beers might we recognize that were Steve beers?
I mean, everyone knows the big one.
Everyone knows the big one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I would take some Dayglow over that any day.
Yeah. Dayglow, Super Fuzz, Split Shot.
Split Shot.
Yep.
Split Shot was fucking money.
Yum.
Trying to think. Punkachino.
Yeah.
Dude, that beer
beer.
I knew that was a Steve Luke beer. I fucking knew that shit.
Yeah.
What?
I had never had it confirmed until just now, but I fucking knew that.
Nice.
So, and I have a story.
The Dread and
Yes.
The Dread is
the Dread.
great.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, there's things that like occasionally I'll see them like release, and it's like why are they doing that? Like, I mean, they have the brew sheets all like right there. And,
Yeah.
You know, so. But
Well, I'm sure
they
everyone
also have a
notices the
talented
differences
brewing,
on that too.
They have a talented like brewery like staff, you know, still.
Of course.
So they've at least like kind of stopped going through that brew log, I think, at this point.
Apocalypse series.
Apocalypse series.
Yeah.
Those are mostly dick recipes. Yeah.
I thought, what was the Vietnamese cinnamon? The Blight, right?
The Blight, yeah.
I thought that was your baby.
No. Dick did the Apocalypse series. Yeah.
Damn.
Those were like.
I remember when those first came out. I think I was buying at Bevmo at that time, but we were like clamoring for every single one we could get in a bottle.
Yeah.
John, like when he was running the place, he had the foresight because we'd get 2 kegs, we'd tap one, and then we'd hold one, and we had an apocalypse party.
Sick.
And the funny part of this story, it was the Peste.
Yep.
Was almost like a mole stout. So there's like cocoa and lots of chili pepper
Lots
in there.
of different chili peppers, yeah.
And so I think that came out in like April. And so we hold it till December. Came out in April, it was wonderful, rolled it. And then some point after we had the party, it was on tap, and it had been on tap for a little bit. And there was a lot of cocoa flavor to it. And it just wasn't a lot of heat. And I remember a gentleman was at the bar, and he's like, well, how spicy is it? I was like, oh, man, it's not really hot at all. And he's like, can I try it? Well, sure. So I give him a little, a few ounces to try. And he's just like coughing and sputtering and turning red. And in my head, I'm like, Jesus, Puss in fucking Boots. Like, if you're that fucking sensitive to spice, what are you doing? And sure enough, like I took some in the kitchen and tried it. And I was like, holy fucking Jesus God. And I have a love of spice and heat tolerance. But it basically stratified in the keg. So, like, all the chili oil was up on top.
Sitting, yeah, dude.
Oh, yeah.
It was so fucking hot. Elkhead used to make a habanero stout, and this just fucking destroyed that thing. And it was basically relied on 3 customers to handle the rest of this half barrel. We're like, okay, we're in it to win it. I'm gonna need you in on
Yeah, need you here 3 days a week.
Like, it was so awesome, but the dude was funny because I was trying to not be like you're a freaking asshole. Like,
And you still have? Did you still have some of that, or no? You had because you recently poured that beer too.
oh God, no! I wish.
Okay.
I did a Randall based on that.
Nice.
Yeah, because that's what I like to do. I like to
Yeah.
think of the old things and
Just make new beers.
the Great Gherkin. Like that's a
The Great Gherkin, yeah, the cucumber pumpkin beer.
cucumber pumpkin beer.
Yeah.
That's usually an annual Randall.
Okay.
I'm like, fuck it, I can't.
Are you
get
ever
it. I'll
going to
just
do
make it.
Gorgia on my mind, Randall?
That's a
yeah.
great one.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
During the Super Bowl.
During the Super Bowl.
A pumpkin peach ale.
Yeah. You should try that
I should.
during the Super Bowl.
No. I don't want to be here on the Super Bowl. Fuck that shit.
Good
Make
point.
me come to work on a Sunday? Yeah. Come on. Thought we were friends. I mean, that's pumpkin beer in general was another great subject.
Pumpkin beer, yes. I mean, like, yeah, so at Cloudburst, we still do one a year.
Yep.
And we've even done some collabs. We did a pumpkin beer collab last year with Wayfinder, and Dick came up for it too.
That's fucking rad.
And it won an Oregon Beer Award, and
So rad.
Of course.
and it was like, the director of sales at the time were like, I don't know, 20 barrels of this, like it's kind of coming out late. We're gonna be releasing this in like early to mid October. Like I'm kind of worried about this beer. And they sold 20 barrels of that beer in like a week. And so I think pumpkin beer, like now that less people do it, it's going to move because people that are still doing it are doing it because they truly like enjoy like making it.
Totally.
Yeah,
Amen.
it moves.
It's,
Totally.
And I remember, the time frame of like Buffalo Bills did one. Elysian had it, and the Great Pumpkin was always when you went from Night Owl, you added like Great Pumpkin. Like there's like a small amount of breweries making awesome pumpkin beers. My wife would go crazy over them, like 'tis the season. And then when it was kind of like, let's invite 100 fucking breweries to make pumpkin beer and throw a party, and then kids like us are. That's a lot of leftovers.
Yes.
To go into the market
Totally.
at one
Yeah,
time,
totally.
and it was tough. Like, I think that I'm happy the way things are now.
Yeah.
There's an appropriate amount comes in, grab it, roll it, enjoy it.
Yes.
But because it feels like too, like in January and February, I've been duped a fucking couple times. Not gonna call anyone out, but like, hey, I've got this spiced porter. Right, and then so we're trying to find out any data on this beer. Like, what the fuck is this beer? Doesn't exist. Like, oh, you sons of bitches!
Yeah.
You sons of bitches! You got me.
Winter Spice Brown Ale.
You got me. Yeah.
You fucking liars.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm kind of like, I'm amazed that, I mean, like Elysian's pumpkin beer, like Night Owl is still almost like it's in lots of states.
Yeah.
It's won back-to-back GABF medals.
It's still kind of the best.
It's brewed. I mean, like the
Pumpkin
ones
beer.
that
Great
the mass
pumpkin.
produced, it's brewed in Arizona. It's at Four Peaks is where they're making
Oh,
the
no
majority
shit.
of the Night Owl.
Oh, wow.
At least for like, the larger like markets.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's crazy. I'm glad that like now that there's lots of people that have like left that place, but like, Night Owl, like that's still part of their identity, even though the person whose real identity that was like has been long gone. And then there's other rumblings and grumblings where people have put their foot down over there, where there might have been a conversation about having a pumpkin spice seltzer in the works, that the brewers over there were like, fuck that. That's not,
It's too many things.
It's too much.
It's too many things.
Yeah. And so kudos to that, so like, but, that said, I'm sure there's like, didn't Bud Light Seltzer put out like a pumpkin spice thing?
Oh, I'm
or,
sure
like,
they did.
Yeah, but
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
yeah.
That was
A lot of us still begrudgingly answer when people are like, who makes the best pumpkin beers? And a lot of us are just like, Elysian still kind of does.
They've been
Like,
doing it the longest. They have a like
Yeah,
they have
dude.
they have a great they have lots of literature on like how to like really, I mean, who makes things the best. Typically it's people that have like been doing it the longest and continue to still like do it a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And like, you and me both, like Dark of the Moon, like that was that. I haven't had it since I
Shit
left,
was
but like that was
phenomenal.
one of my favorite.
fucking yeah.
Yeah.
Randall inspiration.
Yeah.
yep.
At least half of it.
I
Firing
vote,
grinds
I vote
being
for
the
a
other half.
Punkachino and a Gorgia on my
Yeah.
mind, Randall, at some point.
Yeah.
The old Elysian festivals, like when, especially when it was like just Capitol Hill, and they would
Totally. Yeah. Those
fill a gourd with great pumpkin and
Oh, yeah.
tap it like a firkin.
Yeah.
And that was like, that is the most fucking badass thing and it's fucking
pouring beer out of a giant pumpkin.
Absolutely,
It's pretty savage, actually. It's yeah.
You know, talk about a line of people freaking tickle me elbow crushing each other. Like it was,
hell yeah.
I mean, not that bad, but it was a big deal. Like because it didn't last long.
The other like event that I missed the most, like from those days, there during Seattle Beer Week, early days of Seattle Beer Week, there was an event called Firkin, and like it kind of spawned off into like teams of Firkins too. So like, you know, you've got two of the people there trying to source Firkins from all of their brewer friends all over the country to be like, all right, it's like eight all-stars versus 8 all-stars on my team. And like, you know, collecting votes and things like that. And like, you know, cask beer has certainly like seen that decline. And especially as more people like just like put those weird infusions that we used to put in firkins and casks. Now they're just like going into beers, you know, QA, you know, shelf stability be damned. It's just like, yeah, put that weird shit in there and like, let's can it.
Absolutely.
But you know, prior to that, like the firkin was like the mode to kind of like get weird with something or, and you know, that event was always like super fun and kind of like since that handoff, like there really isn't like many events or festivals like in Seattle or Washington for that matter that like bring in like other breweries from like other states. There's like, you know, you can kind of go to other like invitationals and other like beer fests and like get a like nice like hand selected smattering of like breweries that you've never tried before because, you know, so and so's kind of in the same brewing tree and like, you know, 3 breweries later they're brewing over here and like what's this brewery and like, oh my god, this beer's great, like who is this? It's like, oh, it's so and so came from so and so and I do think like at some point there's going to be a need to like kind of as amazingly like Homer Washington beer is, which is like to our benefit.
Totally.
And like, but it's also really like cool to try other people's beers from other parts of the country that we really don't have access to. And really we don't have a need to really seek out because we're spoiled as shit here.
Yeah.
Just with like the overall quality of like fantastic beer in our backyard. But at the same time, like remaining insular, like isn't like the best for the future of like our scene. You know, you kind of have to go on trips, get yourself out there, like go to San Diego and like try a bunch of like new modern IPAs. Yeah, like, you know,
well, we talk about this a lot as far as Tacoma Beer Week stuff too.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there should be a Cloudburst Invitational.
So much work, which is
Jenny and I will help you.
Maybe someday, but like, it's like we're such a small team. I mean, there's 11 people at Cloudburst, and we have 2 locations. So it's like that's not a lot of people. And in festivals are like you're never making money on festivals anyways. It's kind of like
it's a marketing expense.
Yeah. It's a lot of work for just this like break even thing. And I do think that's worth it to kind of just show people some really cool things. But the people that do it well around the country like have much larger teams that can, you know, and logistics and handle that. I mean, the nice thing with Washington State being a self-distro state, like it's very easy for any brewery to ship beer into the state for $200 basically to claim self-distro. So like, you know, but it's there. It's just like somebody needs to do it.
Yeah.
I took a trip to Indiana recently to like go to a beer fest out there, and it was like a lot of East Coast and kind of Midwest breweries kind of coming together, and it was at 450 North. So of course there was like a ton of sort of smoothie style stuff, but also like
was anyone harmed?
No, not that I know of.
No exploding cans.
No exploding cans. No, they're all pasteurized now. And they, but it was cool to see. First of all, it was like a really young crowd, which was cool. Like it's, you know, pastry stouts and smoothie sours, like kind of got young folks excited about this sort of new beer thing. But a lot of those guys who make those beers out there also just make like really great Czech Pilsners. Zool was there, Atrium was there. Those guys have been recognized at like World Beer Cup for their IPAs and lagers. And it was cool to like see their attitude on that kind of stuff, because it's like, yeah, like this is the stuff we really like to make. This Czech Pils is my baby. I absolutely love this. But also people just really want to drink these like smoothie beers and these pastry stouts, and I want to do a good job at those too. And it was cool to see the attitude, and it's like not totally something that we have in the Northwest. Mm-hmm. And so it's like we are super spoiled here because the bar is so fucking high, but it also kind of leaves a lot of beer makers aiming at certain specific things, and they're not totally forced to branch out a little bit. And like in that kind of effort, also get new younger beer drinkers excited about the craft beer world. So I don't know. That's like one of the benefits. Like in my head, I was like, this is like a thing we're missing, and it'd be one of the benefits of like breweries coming in here and like showing off what they do outside of the Northwest. Like we are spoiled, but everybody's kind of got a thing they have to aim at, and you got to stray from that.
Yeah. I mean, even like the concept wise, like, you look at like Strange Brew in Port Townsend, where like that festival is super fun, but at the same time, people are going so insane with like when we went, we poured there once. I've been there a few times, but like the beer that we were pouring, was undrinkable to me. Like it was disgusting. But
what was it? Just out of curiosity.
It was a Choco Taco beer. So, but like it was a base stout that I put
sounds fire immediately.
Taco seasoning like infused.
Oh. You had me in the first half, Steve.
It's disgusting. But so you're trying all these beers from all these breweries, really small breweries, especially on the peninsula, or like Western Washington, and I don't know if they make good beer 364 days, a year.
Yeah. Right.
When I'm trying these like two fucking weird, projects that they just like put together. Yeah. So even something where it's like go strange, but like you also have to bring like a pale ale. And
totally.
Just like, so it's like, all right, like, that, this weird, goldfish.
Tomato soup beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Served by someone wearing a Speedo.
Yeah.
Sure. The beer is not the only thing strange at Strange Brew
Fest. Yes, that is true. Yeah. Fantastic festival. But it would be great if they made everyone bring a pale ale too.
Yeah. This is what we also do.
Yeah.
We're going to take a super quick break, but we'll be back hopefully with more fuck-up stories and more Cloudburst stories.
Cloudburst.
Yeah. Like actual Cloudburst stories. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We are back talking with Steve Luke, of course. But before we get back to all of that, I do want to give a quick shout-out, as always, to Channel 253. Doug, our wonderful producer, is Channel 253.
Woo! Yeah, Doug.
Yeah, Doug. So Channel 253 is a wonderful collection of podcasts hosted by local community leaders and community members with a range of topics going from education to political stuff to community stuff, and it's all wonderful and very informative. And if you want to stay connected to Tacoma as a community, as a city, you can do it through this excellent network of podcasts. You can support those guys by going to channel253.com/membership. We're talking about all kinds of shit before we left. When I was in Indiana waiting for my shuttle to the Corn Maze Beer Fest, somebody was wearing a Space Dust sweatshirt in Indiana. And I'm curious, outside of like the mainstay stuff that we kind of talked about, like your most famous contributions to the beer world, did you do any work out of fields where you were like, this is my shit, like I'm super proud of this, like I'm going to take this wherever I go kind of thing? Like, was there stuff outside of the normal stuff that really hit with you?
I don't know. I mean, like so much of Fields was like experimentation, and so like, and I still feel the same way now, where it's like nothing I do is like this is my shit and this is done and this is like this is good and let's stop. Mm-hmm. So there was the thing with Fields that really kind of helped me figure out was that was the first place that I got to play around with experimental hop varieties and like really made the connection to farms over my time like at Elysian, like so that we would always be kind of getting some new varieties year after year. I mean, it really like was enlightening to, you know, the whole crop variation, the whole field variation, farm variation, that like terroir thing. So they're kind of like overarching things you learn while, you know, working there for 5 years, but there was never like one example of like, oh, this beer, like I can make better and I'm going to take it with me or anything like that.
Sure.
I mean,
I imagine those hop farm relationships have contributed to your insane fresh hop beer prowess these days.
for sure. Yes. I mean, like that, like, I mean, we are so spoiled to be able to like, we as like Northwest like brewing industry, like it's, I mean, and even seeing that, you know, those weren't like, we brew a couple of them at Elysian every year, but like those weren't really a thing like 10 years ago.
Dude, I mean, 8 years ago, people were barely talking about it.
And, you know, maybe you make one and now, you know, it looks like it's kind of getting into like a better place now. Like there was kind of this arms, like fresh hop arms race where like we had to have
You'd
like
be
a
first, you'd have the most.
yeah. The first is like, that's one of those things you never want to be the first.
Yeah.
Like, you know, those hops aren't ripe. Or you're doing the Oregon method of like cold side, like quick age on hop and, you know, package. And, but I mean, like, I don't know, I'm sure like you've seen it like maybe 2-3 years ago when everyone was like doing so many of them. It actually like it hurt. It gave us our worst November we've had as far as like wholesale sales goes, because they'd be like, well, your keg's gone, but like I still have these 10 other kegs to get through. So like we don't need any IPA this week. And then it's like next week.
So
It's
true.
like, well, now we don't need any other IPA this week either. It's like, well, you know, we make 30 barrels of IPA every week. And if everyone's backed up for multiple weeks, like that's a lot of leftover beer that we have to figure out, kind of
We
a
get
thing.
crushed on IPAs for
Get
6 weeks.
terrified about fresh hop season this year, and I thought it played out really well.
I thought
and,
so too.
Yeah, I mean,
You guys both
You
handled
said,
it
like-
wonderfully.
Yeah.
you know, and so many breweries were making like we're making 8 and this, and it's so much in the market at a volatile time.
Yeah.
And like, you know, we've talked about how we roll it here, and you know, just this is the week, this and that, and we're gonna miss a bunch of stuff. But it's a little bit fucking terrifying.
Yeah, and you got to move. I mean, those beers are fragile. You got to move them so
fucking move
fast
them.
too. And so, but I've noticed this year for sure, like wholesale accounts, bottle shops, bars, restaurants, like they've all had that same. They're all thinking the same thing, and they're all like, okay, like we kind of have to like pare this down. Make smart decisions. You maybe not have the same 2 varieties on at one time. So people are kind of like, you know, oh, let me try the El Dorado one. Now let me try the Chinook one, you know, things like that, so that you're equally moving them. But, and it did help, because they're really expensive beers to make anyways. Like no one needs to be making, you know, double digits worth of those things. We make no money on fresh hop beers at all. It's $4 a pound, and I'm putting 600 pounds, you know, in a double batch IPA. Like, you know, we're happy to just like to do it because it's stupid and awesome.
Yeah.
But, you know, we did 7 this year home, and that was a good number. I was also short staffed this whole summer. I was the only one making beer for like 2 full months between our like second brewer.
Holy smokes.
And it's like I couldn't do all those trips, you know, that I wanted to. But it was kind of nice. And we self-sabotaged by putting more lagers in the tank instead. And it's like, well, that tank's not freed up. You know? There's a Czech Pils in there. I don't know. I can't touch it. So,
and that was one of those things. Like I remember we were talking about it, and you're like, I don't want to make as many this year, but it's all the market wants to buy. Like it's just such a conundrum. Like,
right.
like,
yeah.
Like, no, we still want to make some great IPAs. Like,
yeah, we have a whole, every year is a revised strategy of like front end and back end of harvest too. So like, you always get stuck with a whole. I mean, since our ales tend to take 4 weeks from brew to package, we know we're going to be one of the last people out in the market with our first fresh hop beer. That means we have an IPA that's not fresh hop on the sales sheet when everyone else has a fresh hop IPA that people don't want to buy, and I get it. So it's like, all right, we're gonna kind of short our IPA supply weeks before, and just know that if you don't need this. We don't really do permanent handles or anything like that, so it's fine. But like this IPA is for people that like find our IPA critical to whatever their 3 taps they have on it, their small little restaurant. But it won't go into like, the bigger shops because people want fresh hops at that point. Right. And then kind of like the first double batch that I brewed post fresh hops was a double batch of Happy Little Clouds, which we basically like short our supply on the backside of things too, and we'll do a single batch of IPA that kind of the same way. But like, there's so much more logistics and thought that have to go into it because you want your beer fresh and in the market. And for us, that kind of have like that regular like ordering pattern every week in and week out, and we rely on like consistency over anything else as far as ordering goes, because we're a small team. So if we can predict, if you're a place that sells 1 keg a week every single week, that's like perfect for us. We don't, obviously if you're cleaning your lines and keeping the beer cold, that's cool too. But, it's just like that reliability where we can kind of count on that keg moving to the same place week after week kind of a thing. And if you go through too much, it's stressful for us. And if you go through like too little and like less predictable, it's stressful for us too. So it's like, this is just like weird. It's a
nobody wins.
very small. Yeah. It's such a small like margin of error that we try to like make sure our beer is fresh all the time and people are turning it over all the time. And, and fresh hops definitely like throw a wrench in that, but that's
it's also so exciting.
It's a good thing. And like people should try all the fresh hops. Like it's awesome, to see so many people put like a lot out, and they're all getting better and better every year too.
Dude,
like,
they are.
So
this widespread sort of like alternate utilization techniques that went on this year was like bananas. I mean, some of it didn't work, some of it worked really well, but like everybody's experimenting with like how to best get the most out of these, increase accessibility to these like essential oils, and it's been interesting to hear everybody's different approaches, and it's I don't know. It's like
you guys don't suck at that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
No.
Like you guys come
things
up a lot
hanging on
when
the
we all
wall.
talk about it.
At the brewery.
But it's also like it's the thing that like kind of I think we don't always like talk about so much is like the drinkers of the last 5-7 years also realize how special of a time it is, so that you are moving through those beers like that fast. Like people in the Northwest are like, oh my God, like, okay, for 6 weeks, like I have to go out multiple times a week and like drink multiple fresh hop beers a day because like I only get this for 6 weeks.
Yeah. Well, look at Untapped. You have people posting number 117, number 120.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're just.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Which is awesome. Like that. Like that. Like I think for how much like I don't like Untapped, and just like you kind of like there's a double-edged sword, at least as far as like the beer drinker, like consumer thing goes. But the spread of information to like just the typical person sitting on the other side of your bar or in your bottle shop now knows so much more than they did 5 years ago and way more than 10 years ago and like light years away than 15 years ago. Like how much, like everyone probably sitting out here can at least name their 3 favorite hops at the bar.
That's probably fucking true.
And like that wasn't a thing 10 years ago.
And a lot of them could probably pick out things like diacetyl in a beer.
Yeah.
Which also,
So it's like, so that allows lots of breweries in our area to have that like kind of like less risk approach of like, let's blow out the fresh hops and like we'll move them as long as we don't like bite off more than we can chew. But like when it's out there and you do a good job, they're going to move really fast. People are going to notice it.
Yeah. You have like buy-in from the beer community out here.
Yeah.
And so they get it and they're out there, and that's true.
So we're getting close on time, and we need to do the fuck-up stories. But we also need to talk about the origin of Cloudburst. And you came up with the idea before it was sold. Elysian
Correct.
was sold.
Yeah. I was working on a business plan. Yeah.
And how did you come about that idea?
I think I kind of got to a point at Elysian where like there was no, not like that I wanted upward mobility, but like I was like kind of plateaued there, like with fields. even more so when like I'd have to cover shifts at like the production facility and be like, I'm brewing at a production brewery again, and I definitely do not like want like I'm doing this to cover somebody.
Not my career path.
I don't like this.
Yeah.
I think most brewers get to a point where it's like I can either kind of like bounce around in a head brewer role working for other people, or I'm going to try to work for myself and like make it work. And so that to me, like being young enough, and like, you know, I'm making no money, but my wife has a great job, and like she's always put up with my broke ass like brewing self even before we were married. So it's like behind most successful brewers is probably a partner that has been paying the bills for
and is really patient.
long time. And so, you know, like that was the time to like take that risk.
Behind every brewer is a partner who's been paying the bills for a long time. Yeah. Oh, I'm writing that down.
But yeah. So like, you know, I had like no savings. I had no money. I had recipes that were hits.
Yeah. You had a reputation.
And so that was like the only thing I really had going for me as far as like putting a business plan together. Ended up, you know, raising money from like friends of friends, and you know, we started with like 20 small investors or so. It was a good deal for them for sure. It was like $10K for like 1.5% of the brewery, and so I mean I still own 62%.
Nice.
You know, kind of learned the lessons from Elysian and from a few other like brewery owners in Seattle. It's like never give up more than 55%. You always want majority, but you also want a percentage that if you need more money because you run out, that you can sell off a little bit more, kind of a thing.
Oh, word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at that rate, you know, everyone else that's still involved in Cloudburst, as far as ownership goes, nobody owns more than like 4%, and most people still own, about 1.5%, 2% or so. So found a great lawyer who isn't necessarily a startup lawyer, but he also helped Holy Mountain get their like subscription agreement, operation agreement, you know, filing with the state in place. Also ended up helping several other breweries, like two. We use the same accountant. It's like there's certainly this like trusted network of like, I'm not an expert in this, so who did you use to kind of like do that, and you know, raise money and take money and things like that. So, once the sale happened, I probably only had about half of my goal. I raised. What did I raise? I raised $250K, and then I took out a bank loan for $350K with their like cash on hand. So Cloudburst was started, you know, with $600K. Wow. Try to source everything used that I could.
Yeah.
We did run out of money. We got no TIs because, you know, you're a first-time business owner, so like a landlord's taking a risk on you. You know, no free rent, no TIs. Ran out of money doing the floor. And an angel came in to give us a very cheap loan, because now we're fast forward to the point where my former boss has $10 million in his bank account, and he also has a 5-year non-compete as far as like any involvement goes. However, his more successful partner, Kim, has no non-compete. And so we had a nice like angel investor loan from Kim Jordan for our floor. It's the floor. It's Kim Jordan's floor.
Oh, that's fucking rad.
Yeah. And paid off her loan in 18 months. You know, it was a 2% interest fixed rate. And so so like, you know,
Sweetest thing I've ever heard.
Every time, you know, I mean, most people starting up, especially on a shoestring budget, like they always say, well, you know, you got to have some buffer. And it's like when you find out your floor, you know, has 100 years of runoff underneath it, and some of the concrete is like 2 inches thick and cannot sustain a 30-barrel full tank fermenter. You got to tear it all up and run out of all your money.
God.
What do poor kids use for tap handles? Starting up.
Do you have those at all? Did you have one of ours?
He's got some. They're not tap handles.
I have
They're not tap handles.
Yeah.
They're in his drawer at home.
I mean, what do you...
Yeah.
Well, I was
umbrella handles from a woman in the market.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Umbrella handles.
Yeah.
That's it.
Damaged. Yeah. Factory seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other handles.
Yeah. The other handles.
Oh, the other handles. Oh, there's only a few in circulation. I don't think they're used anymore.
In circumcision?
Yes, there's only a few.
What?
I don't know, man. That was
Circulation.
I don't know.
Circulation. Oh, okay.
I didn't even know you knew about those handles.
I know about those handles, and I was offended that I didn't get asked for contributions.
Oh wow, yeah. Those handles were never given. They were requested.
Okay.
And the story goes, the late great Matt Bonney was in our office one day and saw one of those in a drawer and said, "I want this as a tap handle." And we said, "Okay, we'll make that as a tap handle for you if you're serious about it."
Freaking awesome.
Yeah. That's
If it's
how it
not clear
goes.
to anybody, they're dildos.
We're nice seeing this up. They're Bilbos, right?
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bilbos.
Yeah.
Family-friendly podcast.
So we don't
Yeah,
get
family
kicked
friendly
off.
podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get your kids in here around the fireplace.
Tell Eric we said sorry. I don't know a dresser that doesn't have one.
Only three ever made.
I thought it was. I just thought it was funny, and that was the thing. Like, you want a tap handle? Here you go. Here you go, asshole.
Yes, yeah.
Bam.
At one point, like they thought there was one of the bar managers at an account thought that it was like the penalty tap handle. So like if like they were like ordering late to Noah frequently or like not showing up at time of delivery. That's what we gave the person as the handle, like in the penalty box kind of a thing. And
The ultimate dunce hat.
We didn't realize
The
that
ultimate
until
dick
they were
move.
like, please just don't give me the handle. And it's like, what do you mean don't give you the handle? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I'm sorry. Like, I haven't shown up. I didn't have a check for you last week. And then,
I am doing that for every time I take a delivery and there's no check waiting for me. That's it. Here's your handle.
How'd you come up with the name Cloudburst?
I'll take them.
the name Cloudburst, I mean, there's really like not a great story for the name of it. At Elysian, like we'd sit in on marketing meetings and come up with all the names of these beers and things like that. I thought, so you're kind of just like something that like a word that invokes like an action or an image or kind of things like that. It was never like really like this, like, yes, like, you know, we're in Seattle and it's rainy, and so here's a rain named like brewery. It was kind of more like I liked the word burst, and you know, cloud in front made sense, kind of a thing. There was, it's such a horrible like, how'd you name your brewery?
Oh no, it's like
origin.
my name would have been like, what's Cloud Moist Brewing? You like burst, I like moist. And a lot of people hate that word. It's
Totally.
apparently offensive. So
But yes. What, you know, who doesn't like a moist cake?
New beer name, I call it.
Moist cake.
you can have that one, man. That's not good enough.
Moist.
Put it on the whiteboard.
Moist is used in multiple fresh hop beers I've seen on Untapped. So like it's out there.
Good,
Yeah.
as it should be.
So not a great naming like story other than
It sounded cool.
it sounded good. It sounded good, and like I think
Cloudburst is a real thing. It's a term.
it's
Isn't
a
it?
real thing. I mean, we get, you know, you follow your hashtag on Instagram, and more so now with climate change being, you know, a little bit more active. There's lots of cloudbursts that occur in India, and like people take videos of cloudbursts and say, you know, hashtag cloudburst. And
Oh.
just like they come up in our feed, and you're like, oh my god, there's like people dying and from a cloud.
Happy little clouds.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I did not realize that. Like, there is a negative connotation to cloudbursts in other parts of the world for sure. So, not to go dark on that.
No, that's all right. That's right. The vibe that we wanted right at the end. That's perfect. I think it's a great name, and it actually makes so much sense for the Northwest. And it is a bummer that it comes up kind of like.
Yeah, you know, the other like funny thing though, since it is kind of this like, you know, rare like weather event, occasionally there's like a weather people like convention going on in like Seattle, and like all these weather people come through and like buy shirts of it, and like it's like niche fan of like, oh my god, like we just sat through like a conference talking about Cloudbursts, and you know now I can buy a shirt and stuff. It's pretty funny. So.
Jesus. It sounds like we're about out of time, but thank you, of course, for coming down. See, this has been awesome.
Thank you. Not seeing one more F up?
No, do we have Doug? Yeah. One more?
Sure.
Okay.
One more F up. Oh man.
Are we family friendly now? We don't. Okay.
Oh yeah, I feel like we've all been swearing this entire time.
We have, yeah. Just Sean out of nowhere.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to shorten the words.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, Sean, you saw the aftermath of like my most recent fuck up, which was which like surprisingly like it really doesn't happen much at our space, but if you follow like some brewery centric Instagram accounts, you'll often see videos of people like geysering their tanks during dry hop.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And since we dry hop, the way that we dry hop is typically at terminal for our IPAs. So there's really like at this point the yeast is flocked out, and there's really no carb because we haven't bunged the tank yet. So our dry hops are easy peasy. But for this one tank, we used it was kind of over full. We've lately been doing anything that's like West Coast style that you see that we release is actually with 3470 instead of our house yeast.
Oh.
And so the fermentation primary is a little bit slower, so we are dry hopping around the same day if we're cropping it, but that means the beer is not at terminal. And so yes, I was dry hopping an IPA onto a West Coast beer, and it erupted quite violently. Typically, we try to dry hop with someone else in the area. No one was there, so I was like on top, like putting the cap on while things are spraying, screaming for Noah to like turn the jackets on so that it would at least like shock the church, like kind of slow down the activity. We're still finding like hop crud on the backside of like all of our fermenters.
Shit.
In where it happened too, like that space, like you were telling me about it, is like, there's some mess there, but there's like from the brewery to the cooler, right?
Yeah.
That little, what is it, like 2-inch fucking gap?
Yeah.
That was the one. I was like, I mean, cleaning up this space sucks, but like where all the cans and kegs are.
It traveled a long way.
Fucking yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't help. Like the dry hop port on that tank is like 14 inches to the ceiling. So this tank is like set between our two beams. So I can't even like get very close up there. So it only has two directions to go because it's like enclosed in the beams.
Oh, Jesus.
So yeah, not fun.
Very similar. And it's funny it's coming up because we had taken, it was Halloween time, and we were doing an Avery stout that was ridiculous, and we basically made tweak out of Mephistopheles or some shit like that. And it was the end of the night, and the Randall had been empty, and I never depressurized it, and so I pulled off my connection end to clean it. And I've never fucking done this. And of all the nights, like we'd gotten our ass kicked, and so we just sprayed, sticky Imperial Mephistopheles
14% stout
all over the fucking clock on the TV. It went down to the booth, and like it's already 2 a.m. because
sounds like hell.
Yeah, I mean it was rough. Like when we were shut down for the Great Quieting, like we still found, like we thought we'd cleaned it all up. But when we start deep cleaning, we're like, oh yeah,
that's a Mephistopheles. That's a bead of Mephistopheles.
Oh yeah, it's one of those like it's so bad, like profanity doesn't even fucking. You're like, fuck it, it's not worth the cussing.
I mean, at least like it was in a cool. I mean, that in July with like then the fruit flies would tell you where it was left off.
Yes,
but like at least you kind of have
to your friends.
Yeah. What do you?
Damn it. All right, Grit and Grainers. Email us at cheers@gritandgrainpodcast.com with your comments, opinions, and photos of sudden unexpected onslaughts of rain. We read and drink everything we receive, and we'll try to respond as quickly as we can, if not online, then on air. You can subscribe to Grit and Grain on Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher, and please leave us a review. Also, check us out at Channel 253 and gritandgrainpodcast.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for episode notes, beer news, and suggestions on what to do when dogs of jaunty disposition and questionable crossbreeding approach you with drool-covered frisbees in their mouths while you're sitting calmly on the park bench trying to read that all-important Money Magazine article on how to afford to haunt your own house. Do you shoo the pathetic beasts away? Do you practice your ghost voice? Or do you stare deep into the creature's deep brown eyes and connect on a cosmic frisbee catching level? If this podcast is not what you expected, please alter your expectations. Anyone can walk across life's red-hot coals with the proper concentration, carnal glee, and psychoemotional calluses. No such thing as bad time to visit Tacoma. No such thing as too much barley wine. Tune in next Friday for more sweet chatter. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks again for tuning in. Don't forget to follow us at Grit and Grain Podcast wherever you get your social media and catch new episodes every Friday. Cheers.
This is Channel 253.